What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the Neighborhood Podcast. One of the hosts of the podcast. My name is Kyle Dabro.
What's going on, everybody? Kevin Valentin here, other half of the podcast. Dude, the finals are set.
Yes, sir. We had a great Game 7 take place between the Boston Celtics and the Miami Heat. But as of now, Celtics are advancing to the NBA Finals. They'll go up against the Golden State Warriors later this week, which should be a compelling NBA Finals. That's definitely something that we'll get to later in the episode. We got a couple topics for you guys. It's going to be a relatively short agenda, but Kev, you ready to dive into this?
Oh, you already know.
So, like I said at the top, we're going to go over the Game 7 that took place between the Celtics and the Heat. Like I said, the Celtics won by the score of 100-96. So we'll first focus on the Boston side of the game. Then we'll kick it over to Miami. Unfortunately, there has to be a loser in this situation. Miami falls a little bit short as the number one seed in the East. We'll just talk about really the game that they had and where they're going to go from here going into the offseason. And then after that, we'll do a finals preview. We'll just kind of go over like our first thoughts of the series. Later this week, Wednesday specifically, we'll probably record a separate segment where we actually give our full on predictions for the NBA finals. So definitely stay tuned for that later this week. And then really to round out the episode, just to kind of focus on some of the NBA offseason talks or rumors that have been flying around on social media. We'll talk a little bit about Zach LaVine. There's been some reports that indicates that he could be linked to the Los Angeles Lakers, to the Dallas Mavericks, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's some other teams in there. I think the San Antonio Spurs are another team that are in the mix as well. We'll talk about just whether or not the hype around Zach LaVine is going to be worth it this offseason, because more than likely he's going to be on the way out of Chicago. Just that's really just kind of the sentiment that Kevin and I have at this point. But that's pretty much the agenda that we have for you guys. Let's not waste any more time and let's dive into this Game 7 that took place between the Celtics and the Heat. Celtics are advancing to the NBA Finals after a gutty Game 7 performance where they won by the score of 100-96. Even though the score did indicate that it was a close game at the end, Boston was able to maintain a pretty sizable lead throughout most of the game against Miami. Miami made a pretty good stretch at the end of the game. It definitely made it compelling in the last minute of the fourth quarter. Jimmy Butler tried to go for a go-ahead three-point shot with about 20 seconds to go. He missed that three-point shot. Boston knocks down a couple free throws, and they played solid defense against Miami to close it out to advance to the NBA Finals, where they'll go up against the Golden State Warriors later this week in Game 1. So, Kevin, to kick this one to you, just how impressive was Boston in Game 7 against the Miami Heat?
I mean, you look at this game and you say, yes, the final score, like Kyle alluded to, 196. Close Game 7. Wasn't like the Phoenix and the Dallas series where it was a 30, 40-point blowout. This game was relatively in distance, in striking distance for Miami. And you just look at this and you say, you know what, Boston was able to execute. They got great contributions from their three big-headed monster and in their own variation of a three-headed monster. Jason had 26, Jalen had 24, Marcus Smart contributes with another 24. And, you know, obviously the entire team was able to give some kind of assistance to the Celtics, whether it be on the defensive side of the ball, whether it be in the rebounding category. Everybody did something to make this game work out for Boston. And then you look at the other side and you say, well, Jimmy Butler is literally out here playing the entire game. Jimmy Butler is dropping 30-plus points in back-to-back elimination games. He had 35 tonight. He had 9 rebounds. What more can Jimmy do? Like, he gives you every minute of the game. He gives you 30 points. He goes out there and rebounds the basketball as the two guard. And then you go and you sit, or excuse me, as the shooting forward, small forward. It's late. I'm sorry. I tend to make these mistakes pretty often. Anyway, and then you go out and you look at the rest of the supporting cast. Outside of a clutch 3 in the fourth quarter, Strus ended with 8, but only had 5 up to that point. PJ Tucker only played 17 minutes, 0. Bam Adebayo had his second best game in the entire postseason. Thankfully, it happened to be in a timely manner, and he showed up with 25. And Kyle Lowry actually played to me, 15, but in a very inefficient shooting percentage, 4 of 12, 1 of 6 from the three-point line. He had 7 rebounds and 3 assists, but again, just Kyle Lowry wasn't necessarily available for the majority of this postseason with his hamstring injury. And then you look at the bench, that deep team that we talked about, that team that Miami had in fear or people needed to fear, just didn't happen. Gabe Vincent, 4. Tyler Hero tried to come back, and Kyle and I were just talking about this legitimately right before we hit the record button. We applaud Tyler Hero for playing on a groin injury. He only played 7 minutes, but he gave it his all. Just couldn't get it going. Obviously, groin injuries are hard to play with. So I mean, shout out to Tyler for at least giving Miami everything he had. And then Oladipo, man, 4 of 12, 1 of 7 from the 3-point line. Picked a real bad day to shit the bed. Only 9 points. So basically, this team was led and carried by Bam and Jimmy. And outside of that, man, they really didn't get anything. So the game, like I said, overall, it shows Boston was able to carry throughout the series with their combination of Jalen and Jason, and they were able to combine for 50 in a win. Obviously, Bam and Jimmy combined for 60, but the supporting cast was not able to contribute like others. So Boston's headed to their 22nd franchise history finals appearance. Guys, I also gave Kyle this number. Out of 22 appearances, they've won 17. That is absolutely insane of a percentage. So Boston is one of the biggest, if not the most successful franchises in all of sports, along with the LA Lakers. They are tied for the most NBA championships with 17. But you look at this and you say, okay, one of the league's best offenses are going up, excuse me, one of the league's best defenses in Boston are going up against one of the best offenses this postseason in the Warriors. But yeah, man, in terms of this game 7, it gave us everything you needed. Boston went on a run in the fourth quarter. Miami goes on an 8-0 run to claw within just a couple of points, within 2 points. Jimmy Butler takes an ill-advised shot. Depending on who you ask, it wasn't the greatest of shots. The selection of it or the timeliness of the shot wasn't exactly something that you say he took the best shot that was available. They were in transition. They got a rebound. Jimmy pushes the ball down floor. It's one-on-one with Al Horford. Nobody under the rim. Everybody's spread out. The floor is spread between everybody else in terms of getting back in transition defense. Jimmy decides to pull a hard 3 in transition, and it hits the front rim. In my opinion, I would have gone a different direction, a different route. I think I would have put the ball on the floor and attacked Al Horford. You got a big on you. It's a one-on-one matchup. At the worst, you're going to the free throw line. So Jimmy went for the kill shot. Kyle and I said it. If Jimmy makes that, it's a whole different narrative. Jimmy's a legend. South Beach is Jimmy's world, and then we're potentially talking about the Miami Heat going to the NBA Finals. So again, you live and you die by shots like that, especially in the postseason. You either make a name for yourself or you get ridiculed for taking the shot in the first place. And in this case, we're critiquing Jimmy for the shot. So that could have gone either way. But overall, man, this Game 7 did not disappoint, and congratulations to the Boston Celtics, and kudos to my prediction for Boston in 7. So.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I see this game 7 from Boston was I thought they were extremely impressive. Now, granted, the score indicates that it was a lot closer, but really from the first quarter all the way till pretty much the end of the game, outside of maybe the last 2 minutes of the fourth quarter, Boston held a sizable lead, essentially wire to wire. And I got to give Boston a lot of credit for that. And one of the things that I really admire about Boston is just their defense is stifling. And there were multiple possessions throughout the second half in particular where Miami had absolute fits to get any sort of offense going in any way whatsoever. I mean, Jimmy was taking bad shots in the second half. Bam Adebayo was taking bad shots in the second half. Max Strus, Kyle Lowry, like there were a lot of shot attempts that Miami was getting up that were just heavily contested by the likes of Jaylen Brown, Al Horford, Robert Williams, even Jason Tatum was getting involved on the defensive side for Boston. Really, Boston's defense was really the main takeaway from me in this win against Miami. Like I said, Miami only lost by 4 points, but when Boston was able to keep that sizable lead throughout most of the game, it puts all of the pressure on Miami to get back into the game and actually make something of it when you get down to the nitty gritty at the end. But I like the fact that Boston remained poised, even though that Miami really made that late run in the fourth quarter. They were able to get some timely free throws when they needed it from Marcus Smart, and they just kind of allowed Miami to kind of make their own mistakes. And really, that one mistake was Jimmy taking that three at the end of the game. It's like Kevin mentioned. I mean, if Jimmy knocks down that 3-point shot for Miami with about 15, 16 seconds left, he's probably going to go down as like a South Beach legend. That. But the fact of the matter is that Boston gave him space. I think Boston may have just gave Jimmy that space, knowing that Jimmy's not really that good of a 3-point shooter anyway. And Jimmy took a heat check type of shot. No pun intended there. But by and large, if he knocks down that shot, Boston could probably live with it because they still have a bunch of time to get back down the court and then make something happen. But for them, it worked out. And when I look at the individual players that stood out from Boston, I mean, Jason Tatum I thought was effective. He got off to a slow start, didn't necessarily have the most efficient game, but he knocked down some timely critical shots in that fourth quarter that extended Boston's lead late in the game. I thought Jaylen Brown was an absolute dominant force on the defensive side of the ball for Boston, especially against Jimmy Butler. Even though that Jimmy dropped 35 points, there were some possessions where I thought Jaylen played extensive defense against him. So I got to give him credit for that. And then Marcus Smart. Kevin and I talk about Marcus Smart a lot. There's this kind of narrative that he's definitely a conundrum to a certain extent because he takes a high volume number of shots. And even though he did drop 24 points, he took 10 threes. I'll give him credit for the 24 points, but taking 10 threes in a game 7, I don't know about that. Maybe that's something that we'll kind of focus on going into the finals, see if it works for them moving forward. But still, 24 points from Marcus Smart. He knocked down some good shots from time to time. So I'll definitely give him some credit. But, all in all, this team with Boston, they're just a gutty, gritty team. And this is the one thing that I've kind of focused on with Boston that they were missing for years. This team, I thought, was missing really is like a grit factor. And I think what they've been able to establish with just a great stifling defense, the fact of the matter is that Marcus Smart is kind of that, he's really kind of the energizer bunny. Kind of very similar to what Draymond Green is for the Golden State Warriors. I think that's what Marcus Smart's role is for Boston. And I think he does it extremely well. And not only that, I think that even though that Robert Williams gets limited time here and there, I like the presence that he brings onto the court for Boston. He definitely brings a high level of energy, and I think that Boston's going to need that moving forward, going up against Golden State. But all in all, I got to give a lot of credit for Boston's success on this playoff run. Ime Udoka has done a phenomenal job with this team, taking it to a level that Brad Stevens just couldn't get it to when he was the head coach for the Celtics. But Ime has found the right path here for this team. This is a great unit that they have. And I think if you're a Boston fan, you got to feel good knowing that this team, they definitely gone through some of the struggles, especially with Jason and Jalen going through growing pains for the last couple years. But to get to the finals in the manner that they did it, it's got to feel good. And it's definitely going to be a fun series when the Celtics go up against the Warriors later this week.
I'm just honestly happy that we're gonna get a good finals. Like I said in my take, we're talking about one of the better teams defensively this season, and we're talking about the Golden State Warriors, who are pronounced to be one of the greatest offensive teams in recent memory. So I think with the improvement of Jason Brown, the fact that I just combined their names shows you guys that I need some damn sleep. The fact that we're talking about Jason Tatum taking that next step, first team All Pro in the NBA. We're talking about an improved stance on his defensive form. I said this to Kyle right as the game ended. Two of Kobe's prodigies or proteges are in back-to-back finals appearances. We're talking about Devin Booker last year, loved Kobe, worked with Kobe, got a lot of comparisons in last year's postseason run for the Phoenix Suns. Jason Tatum deserves his flowers. He's doing the same thing. He wore a Kobe band on his left arm with number 24 in purple and gold. Big kudos and big respect to Jason. But in that fourth quarter, man, Jason hit a couple of shots. That step back three, that spin off of Jimmy. He scored a quick 5 points in about a minute span.
Hooked Jimmy on that spin move, bro. That was a nasty move.
And we're talking
End of the
Those are
shot
very.
shot at the end of the shot clock too.
That's what I'm saying. That step back three with the shot clock fading off on the left wing. We're sitting here and we're looking at two players, like I said, back to back years that are just hitting shots in manners that Kobe would say, "Just give me the basketball and do it." And I just wanted to make a quick mention of it, just because those 5 points kept Boston in the lead. Those 5 points were very difficult, contested shots to where you would say you have to give that up to somebody else. Jason goes and hits him. He's got that mentality. I'm not saying he's got the full Mamba mentality, but he just big moment, big shot clock running, give me the ball, and he does it consistently for them. So again, I say it's a good matchup. We're going to give our full predictions of what we think is going to happen later in the week. But in terms of overall anticipation of what's coming, I know that that's our next subject of choice. So I mean, like,
Yeah.
Kyle, this is going to be a good matchup. I think that they match up well against one another, and I think it's going to be fun.
We're missing something though. We got to talk about the other side of this equation with
Oh
Miami.
yeah, I just like, you hate to
Yeah,
see it.
yeah, no, because unfortunately there is a loser in this scenario. We got to talk about Miami though. Miami does fall short. They were the number one seed, so definitely a tough scene for Miami, knowing that they were just one game away from making it to the NBA Finals. Um, a 4 point loss is definitely tough. Looking at this Game 7 performance, I mean, Jimmy Butler showed up once again, dropped 35 points in Game 7, played the entire game, all 48 minutes, left everything out on the court. Bam Adebayo had a pretty solid performance, dropped over 20 points, was relatively efficient from the field. But the role players from Miami, Jay, just fell short in this game. Kyle Lowry, uh, Max Strus, Victor Oladipo. Um, I think there were some performances from those role players that are, you could look back on it and say there was a lot more room to be desired in that. So definitely a tough way of looking at it from Miami's perspective. So Kevin, to kick this one to you, just what are your overall takeaways from the Heat's loss in Game 7, and where do you think they go from here?
Bro, Jimmy needs help. Listen, I talk so highly of Jimmy Butler. I'm not going to get off the Jimmy Butler hype train because he deserves so much credit for doing this in the way that he does it, bro. It's back to back Eastern Conference Finals appearances in terms of like when the Heat are ready to go. We're talking about the bubble year and then this year, so maybe not back to back, but their last two Eastern Conference Finals appearances or last two deep postseason runs, Jimmy Butler has played the entire game a multitude of times in a postseason run. Jimmy Butler is the leading scorer of this team, and he is not one of those bucket go-getters. He's not known for his offense, so to speak. He's not a consistent shooter. But Kyle and I have talked about it all postseason. When they need it, when it's the playoffs, Jimmy's like the best player on the court majority of the time. 47 points in Game 6, 35 in in a Game 7 at home, and he plays the whole game. Where's the backup, bro? This is Bam's second biggest game in the playoffs. 25 points. Kyle Lowry scores 15, but again, I'm chalking this up to injuries. Miami, if healthy, I think potentially could take this series. Tyler Hero goes down. Obviously, Kyle Lowry was missing significant time. Jimmy Butler's knee was banged up, so he missed the second half of a game. I'm just saying, it happened to be unfortunate, but the rest of that team, Strus didn't show up. Vincent didn't show up. Oladipo didn't show up today. Like, the people picked a bad day to take a day off is what I'm trying to get at. So shots weren't falling down for Miami tonight, but overall, the fact that they were here speaks volume of the coaching staff and the team. Coming up this offseason, I don't necessarily know what they're going to do. Obviously, Jimmy's locked in there for another couple of years. Bam's locked in there for another couple of years. I believe Kyle Lowry's in there for another 2. Tyler Hero's due for an extension. What do you do with the rest of the team? I think Strus signed a 2-year deal, two-way at the beginning of this year, but I mean, obviously, he's going to earn more money and more minutes because he was a great player this year. I think he averaged like 12 and a half, 13 points this season for them. You have to look at it. Is PJ Tucker coming back? Is Udonis Haslem, who plays no minutes but is on the roster, is he coming back for his mediator coaching role that he kind of does there, like the OG of the team? Um, is Gabe Vincent coming back? There's a lot of question marks as to what roster Eric Spoelstra and Pat Riley are going to be able to assimilate behind Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo being the leaders of this team. Uh, but you have to look at this, man. Low key, and I mean this in the most respectful way. Low key, the Kyle Lowry signing wasn't necessarily the greatest. He wasn't healthy all year. When he wasn't the greatest player. Obviously, he's getting older in age, but now you got to worry about Kyle Lowry next season again with injuries. He's owed a couple million dollars. I believe he signed a 3-year, $90 million deal, if I'm not mistaken. So that averages out to just a bit of over $30 million a season. I don't necessarily know if he's worth that kind of money, but here we are. So yeah, no, it's going to be a complicated offseason. I think Miami's going to have to make some adjustments. I think that they're going to need another player next to Bam and Jimmy to really make a run because we know how competitive the Eastern Conference has become over the last couple of years. But Miami will be back. Let's not get it twisted. As long as you have Jimmy Butler on this team and Eric Spoelstra to lead them from the coaching side, it's just a matter of what pieces you put around him. Bam's just got to play better on a more consistent basis. I mean, he had 2 20-point games in this entire series. He had single digit points in 3 out of the 7. It's not good enough. That's not how you get stuff done. If you're a max player for the Miami Heat, if you're a max player in the NBA, you don't not show up for work in important playoff games. So, like I said, Miami's fine. I think they just need to figure out what they're doing roster wise. I think they need to figure out what they're going to do with their cap situation. Obviously, you kind of tied down to a couple of players specifically, and Tyler Hero is going to be due for a big extension. So we'll see what happens, but I firmly believe Miami will be back next season.
I mean, I'm of the mindset that Miami's not going anywhere in the near future. I think they fell one short. They fell one game short of the NBA Finals, and this could have potentially been their second Finals appearance in the last 2 years. So,
Three.
well, that bubble finals took place in 2020. So I'm kind of basing it off of
Yeah,
that.
yeah. No, I got you. I
So,
got you.
but I mean, by and large, I mean, I think the team is relatively fine. It's, I think the main thing that they're going to have to focus on here is mostly just role players. 'Cause I think when it comes to Jimmy, Bam, like those two are fine. I do agree with you with the Kyle Lowry one. I think that signing may turn out to be kind of an ugly one looking back at it, just knowing how injury prone Kyle Lowry was this season. But when it comes to Miami, I actually have a lot of confidence in this team moving forward, and I'm gonna do my best to explain why. So the way that I see it is, Jimmy Butler, even though that the Heat are not advancing to the NBA Finals, he has really shown me that I got to respect this guy once it gets to the playoffs. Is Jimmy the most flashy? Is he the best player in the NBA during the regular season? No. But when it comes to the playoffs, this dude is ready to go to war every game. Because when I look at Jimmy's effectiveness, for God's sakes, the guy already has 6 40-point performances in his 3 years with the Heat. He is one behind Dwayne Wade in that regard. And Dwayne Wade played with the Heat for over 15 years. That's incredible in what Jimmy's been able to do in such a relatively short period of time. And I think as long as Jimmy stays healthy moving forward, I think he's going to be able to probably break that record fairly quickly when the Heat do get to the playoffs next year, because I don't see them out of the playoffs next year. They're going to definitely be at the top of the Eastern Conference with the way that this team is assembled. Kevin, I'm in full agreement with you on the Bam Adebayo angle on this one. Bam's got to be better. You know, if Bam's getting this max contract type of money, you got to do better than single point performances in the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, granted, Jimmy had some bad games in the Eastern Conference Finals too. I'm not going to dispute that. But you cannot have multiple single digit performance games because you're leaving your team out to you're leaving your team out to dry in that regard. And granted, Bam showed up in game 7. I'm not going to argue with that. He had 25 and 11. He did what he needed to do. But there were some games that Miami could have had if Bam was a little bit more effective from the field or just made a bigger impact overall. And unfortunately, in this series against Boston, he fell a little bit short in that regard. When I look at the rest of the team, though, Kyle Lowry's getting up there in age. I don't know how effective he's going to be for Miami moving forward, simply just because if Kyle Lowry is going to go into, I think he's going to be 36 next year. He's already injury prone to begin with. He's making over $30 million on this contract that he signed with the Heat this past offseason. Is he going to be somebody that you can rely to be there when the moment is there for Miami to possibly get to a, a finals appearance or just try to be more of a factor in the Eastern Conference going into next year? I don't really know. And then when I look at some of the role players, I liked Max Strus from this regular season. I thought that Max Strus was a great piece that Miami had in their starting five, but there were some games where, let's face it, didn't really work out. I actually remember seeing this was a stat that I saw from Twitter just a couple days ago when they were diving into the effectiveness that Max Strus and Kyle Lowry had in the backcourt for Miami. There was a stretch where Strus and Kyle Lowry went combined 1 of 28 or 1 of 29 as a duo. Can't have that, especially in an Eastern Conference Finals situation. So, maybe Miami retains them going into next year. Maybe not. We'll kind of see how it goes because Max Strus could be looking at a situation where if there's possibility of getting a better contract somewhere in the near future, that could be something that he could entertain. Tyler Hero is going to be the interesting piece here, though. Guy won Sixth Man of the Year this year, and I think even though that he had that groin injury that definitely kept him on the sidelines the last couple games against Boston. Uh, if you're Miami from a front office perspective, you got to keep him in the fold. He's too valuable to give up. He's been solid the entire year. He's been solid pretty much his entire tenure with the Heat up until this point. Just really the main thing was he just wasn't available in the last couple of games against Boston, and I think that hurt Miami in a pretty big way down the stretch where Miami could have gone to the finals. So, all in all, I think Miami's in a pretty good place here. They have a great coach in Eric Spoelstra. It seems like this team is pretty stable going into next year. Really, the main thing, if I'm Miami, is just kind of work on the back end of the roster. The back end of the roster in the playoffs was a little bit weak in this Eastern Conference Finals matchup against Boston. Boston did kind of exploit that, but I don't think that they need to do anything drastic here. I think as long as they're able to retain the players that they have on the, as far as like Jimmy, Bam, Tyler Hero, maybe Max Strus, maybe you could throw him in there as well. I think this team will be pretty viable for the next couple of years. So I don't see the Heat going anywhere. They'll be right back in the fold next year. That's just how I see it.
Yeah, no, the roster as it's currently put together, as it's currently constructed, isn't horrible. Let's make that clear. If it was, they wouldn't be in the position that they're in. Um, but there are just too many question marks in those supporting characters. And I think the biggest one, let's not even forget, Victor Oladipo was a former All-Star. Victor Oladipo was argued to be one of the better players up and coming in the league when he was in Indiana just a few years ago. Since that injury to his quad, he has not been the same whatsoever. And that showed in volume in this postseason. There were games where he had 15, 20 points off the bench. And then there were games like tonight where he just was completely inefficient and not consistent on both ends. Shot selection was questionable. Consistency on the defensive end, where you look at him and say, can he guard anymore? And then you say, well, why is he taking shots like that to begin with? You're not the star. You're not the second star or the third or the fourth. Like, for God's sakes, you're taking some of Tyler Hero's shots, and we know that he wasn't available tonight, but you're not Victor from 3 seasons ago. And it's sad to say, but I think Victor's got to come down off that pedestal of what he thinks he used to be, or what he thinks he still is, should I say. He's not going to be back on this team next season. If I'm Pat Riley, he did not give me enough. He was injured for the last 2 seasons. I cannot risk keeping you on this roster or extending you for that matter, because I don't know his contract specifically. But if I'm Pat, I'm looking to move off of Victor Oladipo, and I'm saving the money that he's owed, or taking that money back, and I'm giving that to Tyler, or I'm looking at an NBA seasoned veteran to come into this and solidify that second unit, because I'm not paying you any more money. I'm sorry that it's gone the way that it's gone since you've recovered from the injury, but for me, as a business decision, Victor's not coming back. I think he's one of the biggest problems outside of Bam. He wasn't able to give them what they've been wanting for since they acquired him 2 seasons ago.
I mean, it really kind of depends on who you look at specifically. And I'm not really I'm not like castigating these guys as like they were like the main reason why the
No,
Heat are going
no,
to the
no, no, no,
final.
no.
But when I look at some of the players that you know Heat have on the roster, Kyle Lowry. How do I say this? I think Kyle Lowry's a solid player,
He is.
and I think he's always been that. Especially when he was in Toronto, he was a big factor in why the Raptors won finals a couple years. But I have to be objective when it comes to Kyle at this point. He's 35, going to be 36 going into next season. How much is he really going to give you? Because really, when you start looking at point guards, when they get up into 35, 36 years old, their viability is going to drop off pretty significantly. I mean, Jimmy's the number one player on this team. You you say with a safe amount of assurance that Bam's the number two. Where does Kyle kind of work in this fold here? Because some people, I think, coming into the season, that Kyle was going to be the definitive number three on this roster. But you look at the roster, you could say, nah, Tyler Hero's probably that. Just because Tyler Hero was more consistent. He was a sixth man of the year. Granted, he's coming off the bench, but I got to give it up to the kid. He played phenomenal this year. Kyle's kind of in this situation where if he can't stay healthy, I mean, the viability is just not going to be there anymore. Or it's not going to be as high as it used to be when he was in Toronto. And then I'm looking at some of the other role players. Victor's a tricky situation as far as I'm concerned, just because I do feel a little bit of sympathy when it comes to really the adversity that he's faced with that quad injury. That was a very significant injury. And I understand it was a couple years ago and he's still battling back from that. But this is a situation where, man, played 33 minutes in game 7 and dropped 9. Now, maybe this is a situation where you keep Victor going into next season. Maybe see how things play out the first half of the year. If things don't materialize the way that you think that they are, maybe if he shows you something, you can get some trade value from him and then maybe trade him, try to make a mid-season acquisition for somebody. That's something that you could entertain. I'm always going to have a little bit of a sympathy spot for Victor, knowing what he went through with that quad injury. That's a very difficult injury to come back from.
Oh, no doubt. No question about that.
You basically had to learn how to walk again after that significant of an injury. So I definitely feel for him because I know that he was, giving it everything that he had. He just wasn't able to knock down shots in game 7. And really, someone like Max Strus, I thought he was great during the regular season. And he was somebody that really kind of caught me off guard with how effective he was behind the 3-point line. But in this series against Boston, he was horrifically bad in some of these games. I mean, there were some games where he had 0 points. You can't have that. Granted, he knocked down a big shot in game 7 with about, I think, like 45 seconds left. I think that got the deficit.
Put him within 2.
Like 2 points. That was a big shot.
Huge.
But he did not have that good of a game. And, maybe this is he only had 8. He had 8. So maybe this is a situation where, it's a learning experience for him. And that's going to be something I'm going to factor with Miami. Miami is still a relatively young team. Jimmy's in his late 20s. I would say
no. That roster, bro, they got like at least 4 players over 30. Like,
yeah, but
into their 30s.
I'm not talking about the core guys. The core guys.
Jimmy's in his 30s.
Jimmy's
Kyle's
in his prime.
30s.
Jimmy's in his prime.
But what we're talking, you said in totality of their age, in terms of being a relatively young team.
Tyler Hero's young. Gabe Vincent's young. Max Strus is young. Bam Adebayo's young. Jimmy's in his prime. Now Kyle Lowry and PJ Tucker are definitely older. But that's
old.
That's 2 out of 5. Like that's 2 out of 7. Excuse me. Like
dude, you do realize they still have older people on that roster though. Like the more whether they play or not, we're talking about as a unit. You cannot say that the team as a whole is young. The Morris brothers in his, I keep forgetting which twin they have, but he hasn't played since he got beat up by Jokic, which is
I,
comical, by the way. Good for you. Um, you have the Morris brother, you have Jimmy. Udonis Haslam doesn't play at all, but UD
he's
is
not
on
real.
the active roster. I'm just saying he's on the roster. So you have to count that as a totality in terms of their age as an average because he's 40 something. And then you look
He's
at,
more of a player coach at this point. He's not going to
I
be on the
agree.
court.
I don't know why the hell he suits up for that. Just become a coach on the roster. I don't understand why the hell you are active on the. Anyway, the point is, I would say that they're like mid to young, but they're definitely not all young. Tyler Hero's like 22. That I understand. Struess, I believe he's been in the league, if not around for the last like 4 or 5 years. He's got to be in his mid to late 20s.
He is 26. He's our age.
Mid. But
So
that's
I
what I'm
mean,
saying. It's not like stupid young, but they're younger. They're inexperienced in the postseason. I feel like that would be more of an appropriate description
yeah,
outside of those veterans that have been in the league for a while.
yeah. I mean, Jimmy's 32. I mean,
I said 30s. I didn't say late 30s. He's 30.
yeah. I mean, Steph's what? 30.
32, 33.
Yeah. So I mean,
There's a difference though. He's got some hardware, you feel me?
yeah, difference. The Heat have made it to the finals. In recent history. So
On the shoulders of who?
Jimmy.
Jimmy fucking Butler.
Yeah, and that's the one piece that's not going anywhere.
Oh
They
my
got
god,
they
dude.
got they got a good thing going with him.
The narrative that we talked about it with Mike last week. I'm not going to repeat myself. I don't give a shit how soft people are. If you can't handle Jimmy getting in your ass, bro, you shouldn't be on a roster.
You got to just got to
Bro, if you
gotta
can't handle
say that
Jimmy
better,
Butler
bro.
being in a you can't if you can't handle Jimmy Butler being a forceful and aggressive teammate
There
or
he
a
goes.
very vocal leader,
There you go.
you shouldn't be playing the sport. Everybody hated MJ when he did it, 6 championships. Everybody hated Kobe when he did it, 5 championships. The hardware isn't behind Jimmy just yet. I think that Jimmy will at least end with a chip or two. I hope for his sake because I love Jimmy Butler. Dude, good players challenge their teammates. Good players push their teammates. And Jimmy is prime example of exactly that. So Jimmy Butler is good. Bam's got to get better. But this team as a whole, Miami's going to be fine.
Yeah. And the way that I see it with Miami is they have a great coach. And as long as you got Eric Spoelstra there, I think they'll be fine. They're going to be a top 4 team in the East next year.
Oh yeah.
And hell, they were the number 1 seed this year. That's got to count for something.
Yeah.
Even though that I do think that the Eastern Conference is, well, let's just face it, it's still relatively weak across the board. Because the Miami, even though that they were a 1 seed, I mean, when you compare their record out to the teams out in the Western Conference, they would have been like the 3rd seed if they were in the Western Conference. I think they had the same record as the Warriors, or very basically within a game or two. So it's one of those things that you just have to kind of keep in mind. I think Miami still has. I think Miami.
They have another 2 to 3 years, but they have to maximize.
Their window. Because once Jimmy gets to about 35 years old, then I would say that their window is in some trouble at that point. But until then, I think
this needs to get figured out ASAP, in my opinion, because
Jimmy
can't continue to do this, bro. This taxing mileage, the minutes that he's carrying on his body
it's a
right
lot.
now,
It's a lot.
He needs help bad.
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't really know what else they need. They've got shooting specialists. The one thing that really surprised me, we saw no Duncan Robinson outside of the first round of the playoffs.
He's probably going to get moved. That's a big contract too. I forgot about him. Shit, good call.
Yeah, he was a non-factor. He got no burn.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that we have to kind of keep in mind moving forward.
That is why I say, no matter what in this league, in any sport, if you are just a specialist for one thing, you still have to be able to play defense on the other side. Dude, I don't care if you can fly out the gym and dunk on anybody. I don't care if you can shoot 50% from the 3-point line. You have to get back to the other side and do and be competent enough to stop somebody. Duncan Robinson can't play no defense. He's a walking liability. That's what it comes down to, bro. Struess got burned because he could play better defense. Vincent got burned because he can play better defense, and they still shot not comparable to Duncan, even though Duncan had an off year in terms of percentages. Um, the two of them together were able to give you the output of offensive success and give two better defenders than Duncan is when he's on the floor. And I think that that's going to be a big thing going forward because I think Duncan has another 2 years on his contract.
He's gonna
So you're
get
going to have to
moved.
monitor. Oh,
He's
he's
gonna get
got to get
moved.
moved. Bro, he's not happy. I wouldn't want to stay in a team where
Eh,
I'm getting paid this money and I'm not playing.
How much you want to bet he goes to the Lakers?
Stop. Stop. The Lakers don't have no defense. That's going to make it worse.
I wouldn't put it past the Lakers to do that though.
Hey, shout out to the Lakers for getting their future head coach. What is that? The Bucks assistant head coach?
Yeah,
Uh, Le GM gets his man once again.
yeah. I mean, we'll see how it works out. We'll
Facts.
see. I mean, you know, it's going to be a tough situation for the coach if the players aren't out there because of injury. And that's something that's
Facts.
always kind of a factor, especially when it comes to like LeBron can't stay healthy, Anthony Davis can't stay healthy. Then, I mean, we'll see what happens this offseason. We'll see if they're
Yeah,
able to bring in
we'll get
everybody.
into that. We'll get
Yeah.
into that in just a few minutes. We do want to at least give you guys our thoughts on this NBA Finals, and we're not going to give a prediction just yet. Just what we think is going to happen, kind of like our outview and our view of what's coming for this matchup against the Celtics and the Warriors. So I mean, without further ado, I'll just kind of dive right into it since I'm already here. Kyle, what are your initial thoughts of what's to come in this finals matchup between the Warriors and the Celtics?
Well, I think this is going to be a great matchup for the finals. I think the way that I see it, you got one of the best defenses in the NBA with the Boston Celtics going up against one of the best offenses in the NBA with the Golden State Warriors. And this is a scenario where I kind of see it as like the old school versus the new school. What I mean by old school, it's specifically the Warriors. The Warriors for the last 7 to 8 years have been phenomenal. In the last 8 years, they've been to 6 NBA finals, led by the likes of Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson. Used to be Kevin Durant just a couple years ago, but now you could integrate one of the new school kids with Jordan Poole into the fold. And Golden State just finds himself back in the situation where they've kind of been in the last couple years. And I do think that their veteran leadership is going to be something of note going into this series just because they know the pressure that comes along with these NBA Finals matchups. They've been in it time and time again. I mean, they've won 3 NBA Finals as this run that they've been on. Granted, they have lost some NBA Finals. The last one that they lost was against the Toronto Raptors in the 2018, I think it was 2018,
2019.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, it's been a minute since we've seen Golden State in an NBA Finals, but they just find a way to, get back into the situation and compete for another title. And then when I kick it over to Boston, this is Boston's first NBA Finals appearance since 2008 with the likes of, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Rajon Rondo, and Kevin Garnett. So it's been a
No,
long
that
time.
was 2010 when they lost to the
Oh,
Lakers.
but that was the last time that they won
Oh well,
specifically.
yeah. Well, you said been to. That's why I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, I screwed up the year, but what I meant
No,
to
you're
say
good.
was when they won. That's what I meant to say. So it's been a minute since Boston's actually won an NBA Finals. But you got a whole new group coming into the fold with Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, Al Horford. These guys have really been through it together as a unit the last couple years. They've gone through their growing pains with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, but relatively speaking, since Jason got into the league a couple years ago when he was a rookie, he has really taken leaps and bounds in his career. He is really one of the focal pieces for the Boston Celtics moving forward. Jaylen Brown has become one of the best two-way players in the game. He's great on the offensive side of the ball, and you could say that he's probably a better defender in some aspects than what he presents on the offensive side, but he's a great player for Boston moving forward. Marcus Smart, the way that I see it with him, he's the energizer bunny for that team. He's the guy that just brings that energy nonstop. And he can knock down shots in big moments for Boston moving forward. I thought that in that game 7 against the Heat this past weekend, he was phenomenal in stretches. Not just because of his shooting ability, but sometimes just getting rebounds, knocking down crucial free throws. He's just at the right place at the right time, and he's going to be crucial for Boston moving forward. This is a great matchup, the way that I see it. You got two great coaches going at it. You got Ime Udoka with the Celtics. This is his first year as a head coach, and he's already gotten this Celtics team into a finals position. I mean, that was something that Brad Stevens was trying for years to get this team to. Fell a little bit short in that endeavor, but Ime Udoka has taken this team to the next step by getting them to the finals. And really, what is there to say about Steve Kerr? I mean, like I said, been the 6 finals in 8 years. It's the first one in a couple years, but just the one thing that I like about Steve Kerr as a head coach is that he just knows this team like nobody's business. Like just the thing that he focuses on, especially on the offensive side of the ball, is that there's so much ball movement and there's so much player movement. It leaves his opposing defense is just exhausted by how much Golden State moves and rotates their players around to get guys open looks. And I imagine that's something that Golden State's going to try to exploit in this upcoming finals matchup. All in all, this is going to be a great finals. I can't wait till um, this series takes place, and I'll let Kevin take it from here.
Well, I mean, Kyle said pretty much every point that I was going to bring up. Obviously, I mentioned it as well in mine when you talk about one of the better defenses in the league going up against one of the better offenses. I do understand what Kyle was going for in terms of the old versus new school. Obviously, Golden State's been here before, and this is Boston's first time with their new group in a while. But I do want to highlight something that people don't maybe not know. This is Jason Tatum's fifth Game 7 in his career. He's 4-1. That's absolutely insane. What that tells me is he likes the big moments. Like I said earlier with that Kobe Bryant, not comparison, but that Kobe Bryant appreciation, should I say? The kid shines brightest when the lights are put on him. The kid is just ready for the adversity. He is ready for the big stage, and I love that about him because we've said the same thing with Game 6 Clay, Steph Curry when he gets hot, obviously, and when they had KD in the finals, he loved showing up and out dueling LeBron James. Both of these teams have players that can dynamically and drastically alter a series. So I don't think that this is going to shy away from anything offensively. I think it's going to be the team that locks up the best. I think it's going to be the team with the better defense that makes the adjustments and limits turnovers is going to be the team that wins. Um, you have the dynamic duo between Jalen and Jason. You have the Splash Brothers with obviously Steph and Clay. You have the defensive anchors and the defensive player of the year, Marcus Smart, who's going to obviously be chasing around the Splash Brothers pretty much all game. And then you have Draymond Green, the two-time defensive player of the year for Golden State. They match up very well. I think that this is going to be a really, really good series. Looney versus Horford on the boards. Obviously, you have Draymond Green versus Robert Williams or whoever he ends up deciding to guard, whether that be Jason or chasing around whoever. Klay Thompson is going to be running around chasing Jalen off of screens as well, and then Steph versus Marcus. Once again, it's you can't really script a better matchup, and I'm really 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 looking forward to it. My biggest question mark for Boston is going to be can Jalen and Jason limit the turnovers? The two of them have combined for double-digit turnovers pretty much throughout this entire series against Miami, and then for Golden State. You live and die by the three. They showed it multiple times throughout the postseason. There are games where they just go absolutely ice cold, and I mean like frozen solid. When Clay and Steph are off to slow starts, that usually means the offense kind of supersedes behind them, and they don't really do too well because no one else is getting into a rhythm. I will say that Andrew Wiggins is going to have to play an incredible factor in this series because just like in the Dallas series, he's going to get a lot of open looks because of his teammates having that threat to get doubled. And Andrew is going to have to hit a lot of open shots. So there's a lot of pressure right now currently on both teams. Marcus Smart is going to be that X factor for me because Marcus Smart had 3 open looks to close out the game that could have sealed it for Boston in the fourth quarter. And I mean, 3 pretty solid looks that he front bricked. And again, like Kyle alluded to, 3 of 10 from the 3-point line, 8 of 22 from the field. There's no reason why a player like Marcus should be taking 10 threes unless they're literally all open. And if that's the case, 30%. not going to cut it against the Golden State Warriors, who are one of the best teams in this league when it comes to hitting 3-point shots. So, again, man, I'm really excited to see what both teams have in store. I'm super excited to see what Jalen and Jason are able to do, and then of course to see if Steph and Clay can go and capture their fourth ring. But overall, man, these NBA Finals are going to be a good one. However, the scheduling does kind of suck. Kyle and I were actually talking about it. Kyle, you can put it back on the two of us. It's it's gonna
Man,
be a pain in the ass.
dude, these 9 o'clock starts are just so annoying. Like,
It sucks.
I mean, I understand like the 9 o'clock starts for the West Coast games, but when this goes back to Boston, these should be 8 o'clock starts or 8:30. It's just, I mean, I remember when we were watching the Warriors Mavericks series.
Every game
Oh,
was at
bro,
9 or 10.
yeah, it's just like I understand that they're trying to accommodate for the West Coast. I do get that, so it's not like I don't understand that. But a 9 o'clock start on weekdays? Because I think what game 2 is game one's
Sunday, it's the only 8 o'clock game.
game 1 is at 9, and that's on Thursday, right?
Yep.
Such a late start. I know it's Golden State. I know they're playing out in San Francisco, and that's a late start for the East Coast. That game's not going to be done till closer to 11:30, 11:45 at night.
And that's assuming that all games are gonna end within regulation. If we have any OT, this game's
Uh,
going into the next day.
yeah, I mean, I remember back in the day when I used to watch Laker games in the playoffs. Those games would start at 10, 10:30, and they wouldn't finish until 1.
1, 2 AM, yeah, depending.
2 a.m. was a stretch. Usually those games were over by about 1.
The only reason I
Still,
say 2 is because
over like, yeah,
the whistle being blown every 5 seconds, you know what I'm saying? Like, the
yeah,
clock's gonna stop.
yeah. It's just that's just the style and the way the game's played now. It is a little bit more annoying just because it slows the game down so much.
Facts.
But that's just kind of the style right now. But I mean, overall, still the series is going to be a lot of fun, and it starts on Thursday. Like we said, we'll have our full predictions going into this series on Wednesday. So definitely stay tuned for that, or we'll record it on Wednesday. We'll drop it on Thursday probably. But
Yeah.
all in all, it's going to be a fun series. I mean, honestly, the way that I see like this series playing out, like I'm trying to think of like other matchups that could have like rivaled this one, but this one's a really good one.
It's tough. It's really good. I mean, I I liked the Toronto and Golden State matchup because I thought that fit well with KD going at Kawhi. Obviously, you had Kyle Lowry and freaking
Steph,
Steph Curry. It fit. And obviously it unfortunately took two major players out of the game for Golden State and Clay and KD both suffering not well potentially
major,
career altering
yeah,
injuries.
major,
You know.
major injuries.
Yeah, so I mean, I get that, maybe that didn't go off as well, but I mean, in terms of finals matchups over the last few years, I would say that that's a really, really good one.
Yeah, I mean, I think coming into this playoffs, I mean, some people were saying, maybe this would be like a Golden State versus Brooklyn matchup, or like maybe like a Golden State Milwaukee series, or maybe if you look at it from like a number 1 seed perspective, like the Suns would have gone up against some of these teams. But I have no issue with Golden State against Boston. This is going to be a fun series,
Oh yeah.
so I'm
Hey,
definitely looking.
shout out to my boy Casada, who's on the show, a frequent guest and a good friend of ours. His boys are back in the finals. They chasing ring 4. And another big shout out to a friend of mine, my boy Conspiracy. If you hear in the episode, my boy is a big, big, big Boston fan. Met recently, but a good friend of mine nonetheless. He was hyped when I picked Boston in 7 and for this series. And I know for a fact that, he's very invested in this team. So again, I got two friends going up against each other in the finals. So it's actually going to be good for me to watch them kind of go at each other. Well, they don't know each other, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I get it. Spirit of competition is going to be there.
Well, I'm hyped for it. I'll be texting them separately. I might throw them in a group chat by accident just to see what happens.
Just don't be too negative.
I don't have a reason to be. My team's not in it. Hey, Dallas lost in 5. I'm happy we didn't get swept. I'm happy we got to where we got to, but that leads us to our next topic. The offseason is looming for the NBA, and we all know the rumors and the leaks and the reports and the speculations that are going to come with potential free agents. Kyle and I's team are both attached to this one particular individual who Kyle had mentioned in the agenda, Zach LaVine.
Yep.
Kyle, take it away, man. I don't even know what to say, bro.
Yeah, there's been a lot of reports flying around about Zach LaVine in the last couple days or so. Um, Depending on how you read these reports, there's a lot of reports saying that Zach LaVine could be on his way out of Chicago. Zach LaVine went to Los Angeles just a couple days ago, was asked about his trip out there, said he liked it out there. Then there was a report that I saw on Twitter this past weekend where Dallas Mavericks could throw their hat into the ring in a possible sign and trade deal for Zach LaVine. There's also been some rumors that San Antonio may get involved. I've even seen that Chicago may even try to make some sort of leap of faith max deal offer for Zach LaVine. So there's a lot of moving pieces here when it comes to Zach. Could be on his way out, could find his way back to Chicago. We don't really know at this point, but we're gonna throw our hat in the speculation and we're gonna try to, play it out as best as we can. So Kevin, to kick this one to you, what do you make of all the Zach LaVine rumors flying around, and where do you see him going this offseason?
I mean, listen, I'm a Zach LaVine fan. I said it in Minnesota when he tore his ACL, or that season he tore his ACL. I said that this kid is talented. I said if he develops a more sound and consistent offensive game aside from dunking, he is going to be a top 20 player in this league. And he has shown that when given the right opportunity. Since he's been in Chicago, his points per game have shot up pretty much every year outside of this year because, this year he was hurt a little bit, kind of going into the season, or not going into the season, throughout the season. But that's the thing. That's the problem. When you talk about Zach LaVine, we're talking this man has not played a full NBA season in the last 6 years. And that last time he played, he wasn't even a starter for Minnesota. He was in his second year in the league. He's played 82 games, but he only started 33. Since then, after the 2015-2016 season, his totality of games each season has been 47, 24, 63, 60, 58, and 67 this year. So the last 6 seasons, he has not played a full year. Zach LaVine's making $19.5 million this season. He is definitely going to be seeking something upwards of $30+ million. If Kyle Lowry is getting 30 or 30 something million dollars a season at age 35, Zach LaVine's looking to get a pretty big bag. And it's just a matter of what team's willing to give it to him. I personally, in my personal opinion, I think he fits better in LA because he can play off the ball and he can play on the ball. He's a consistent. This is something that I will give Kyle credit for. He actually said that he was a better shooter. I actually kind of shot that method down relatively quickly, or that theory, and I was completely wrong. Zach LaVine's a career 38.6% three-point shooter. Let's round that up to 39. That's almost 40%. Zach LaVine is a 20-point per game career average scorer because he's actually increased his points per game every single season. Last season, he averaged 27 points. Even this season, only playing 67 games, he averaged 24. And that was with DeMar DeRozan taking a good amount of shots as well. So the man is gifted enough offensively to go out there and put up consistent numbers. We know he's not a pass-first guard. We know that he's not the greatest rebounding guard in the league either, but he's averaging 24, 5, and 5. Pretty solid for somebody in his 20s who suffered a pretty big injury. But again, the question is, can he stay healthy? I think he would play very well off of LeBron James, but that would also put another injury-prone player in LA. LeBron is getting older. He hasn't been able to stay healthy the last couple of seasons. We all know Anthony Davis's injury history, and then you go and you add another injury-prone player to go and get upwards of $30 million. 3 players, your 3 main players, to go out there and basically be hurt is just, it doesn't bode well. And then you look at my team, Zach LaVine is a ball-dominant player. So is Luka Doncic. Zach LaVine is an injury-prone player. We do not need that. We need a big. We've needed a big since 2011. Mark Cuban, we need a big. We do not need a guard. We have plenty of fucking guards. Tim Hardaway Jr. is coming back next year. We don't need another guard. I'd rather go with Spencer, get Timmy back. Jalen Brunson hopefully gets re-signed. Don't go overpaying for Zach LaVine because you want another superstar. That doesn't cure the center position. That doesn't cure the rebounding aspect. Please, for the love of God, Mark, if you hear this, please don't do this to me. because it's going to end up being a sign and trade, and that means we're going to have to send Timmy and other pieces, more than likely picks as well. Please, just go get me a center, please. That's everything I have to say. Sorry, I'm holding the mic so aggressively.
I mean, Kevin, you gotta be careful sometimes because I mean, you just spent like the last couple minutes really just glowing over Zach LaVine, and then when the possibility of him going to Dallas gets brought up, you make it sound like he's utter trash, like you don't
No,
like want him
he's
here.
not. It's not what we need. We've
I
been
understand.
doing this for years. It's like, oh, we need a car is broken. This is just a shitty example, but this is what comes to my mind right now. I'm just gonna say I'm gonna wing it. A car needs a tire. I'm gonna go get a tail light. What the fuck do we need a goddamn tail light for if we can't move the vehicle without a tire? I'm gonna go put a spoiler on the back of the car, but we'll worry about the tire later. We have been literally an immobile vehicle for the last 11 years, and the fucking spare just finally decided to actually work. But again, it's a spare. It went out. We kept putting spare tires. We need a whole new tire. At this point, we need a whole fucking brand new set of four. But again, for the sake of the point, we don't need another added nice looking piece. We need a functioning vehicle that's going to actually get to the end of the tunnel. No more band-aids, no more temporary fucking donuts. Go get us a fucking fourth wheel. Go get us a fourth tire so we can move. Zach LaVine is a phenomenal player, but he's not what we need. It doesn't fit the system that we run.
I
Luka
understand.
Doncic is too ball dominant to go out and get a man for $30 million and for him to be sitting there like this. That's not his playing. That's not his playing style. It never has been. Zach LaVine's not a spot up shooter. He's a shot creator and a slasher and a finisher. We all know him for being a high flyer, but he's not going to be able to do any of that if Luka's holding the ball for 18 seconds. Just doesn't make sense.
No, when it comes to me with the Zach LaVine stuff, I mean, Kevin, you pretty much took it away from me. But I mean, if I had to highlight really where I see him going, I think for some odd reason, I think he's going to LA, bro. I really do. It's either that or Chicago's gonna pull like this last second max deal offer for him and he takes. But I just think he's on his way out. And the way that I see it with Zach is, can he stay healthy? And that's gonna be the biggest point of emphasis moving forward. If he could stay healthy, I think he could definitely add a pretty solid dynamic to what the Lakers have. But you're going up with LeBron James, Anthony Davis. You're going to be the third fiddle on that team. Oh, when you look at his career stats, he's averaging last like 3-4 years at least somewhere around 25 points per game. That's kind of like just like a combined average the last 4 years together. You're not going to see those types of numbers. If that was the case, he's probably going to average somewhere around 20, just because LeBron's going to probably average close to 25, sometimes even 30 points. For God's sakes, he averaged 30 points this year. Anthony Davis is probably going to average somewhere around 25, but he's probably only going to play like 40 games. And then, with Zach, if Zach plays 60 games, that's honestly pretty solid. That's something that I could at least kind of take into account. But if he's only playing like 30, 35, 40 games, those are AD type numbers. And I can't rely on that. It's just the way that I see this scenario playing out, I think he liked that trip to LA a couple days ago. He was asked about that, and he thought that that trip out there was pretty nice. Definitely see him possibly entertaining the Lakers as a possibility going into this offseason. But as far as the Lakers are concerned, does it really make them that more viable if they were to add him to the team? No, not necessarily. When it comes to the starting five of the Lakers, it's pretty solid. But once you get to the back end of the roster, especially the bench is atrocious. Bench is just something that you cannot rely on in any way, shape, or form. Just because it's a revolving door of rentals. I mean, for God's sakes, the one mainstay on their bench was Taylor Horton Tucker. And he is okay in stretches, but he's not dependable throughout the entire course of the season.
Hey, don't forget about your boy Malik, bro. We all know Malik a hooper.
Yeah, I mean, Malik is solid. And I'm glad that he got some burn when he did. But, when I look at Malik Monk, he's going to be a role player when everybody's healthy.
Yeah.
So Malik had to step up because everybody else was hurt. And I think Malik did a pretty solid job. It's just when I look at the Lakers from top to bottom, obviously the starting five is going to be the focal point of the team. But the problem is that bench is just weak. They don't have a lot to work with there. If
So
they
then
were to,
I ask you then, it's going to be a potential sign and trade.
it could be,
Do you think
yeah.
do you think that Chicago's willing to eat Russell's contract? Because all indications from what we've seen thus far is that LA wants to move on, and Russell's not happy there either.
I don't know how they're going to make that work though. Why would Chicago take on Russell when they have DeMar? I mean,
They need a guard that can push the floor. Maybe I really don't
I,
know.
I,
I don't see you guys acquiring somebody when you have Russell eating up $40 million, 40 plus by the way, AD up in the 30s, Braun in the 30s. You can't sign Zach LaVine to a
I,
max deal like
I mean,
that. You
I
can't
mean,
afford it.
I mean, to me, I'll tell you this: if Chicago was smart, I think they stick with Lonzo despite the injury history that he has.
Maybe you move Lonzo to the 2. Let
Or
DeMar play the 3.
potentially, there had to be some shifting going on there. I think that if they look at it just optimally, I think they have Lonzo at the 1 and they have DeMar at the 2. And they had a great fit with Zach at the 3, so they kind of had some good chemistry to work with there. And then they had
Well,
Vucevic at the 5.
Zach played the 2 for the majority of the season because DeMar ended up playing the 3
Well,
for a lot of the later situations.
yeah, but at that point you have flexibility. You could kind of
Agreed, because the
you
two
could
of them
flip
interchange.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, really, we're at like the point like where like a lot of these guys play hybrid positions. Like really, you can mix the 2 and the 3 at this point. But Lonzo not being there kind of hurt them. So
100%. On the defensive side, especially, bro. We all know Lonzo's not going to be a 30-point per game scorer, but if he can give me 12 to 15 points, 8 to 10 rebounds, 10 assists, because we all know he has great, incredible, impeccable court vision when
yeah,
the floor and everybody is moving in transition.
mhm.
And give me solid defense, bro. A steal and a half, a steal a game. Lonzo Ball is a very slept on person, and we have talked about it several times with guests and between ourselves. If Lonzo's healthy, the Bulls are 10 times better than what they ended up being.
Now, are you convinced that Zach is leaving? Like 100% that he's leaving?
I would say so because I don't see him wanting to play second fiddle anymore, and that's another reason why I don't know if I think he's a better fit in terms of schematic wise, like scheme wise in LA. I think he wants to lead his own team, dude. You took a step back in a lot of your statistics this year when DeMar got inserted. DeMar went on that big run when Zach was hurt, and he kind of stood getting the ball. DeMar hit game winners. DeMar was averaging, I think he scored like 40 points in 3 or 4 straight games, which we haven't seen since Kobe Bryant. And we're talking about Zach sitting there like, I had this team where I wanted it, having career highs and everything last season, and now he takes another step back? Does he really want to do that? I don't know. Does he want to go and play third fiddle in LA with Braun, but he knows he has an opportunity to win? I don't know. But I would assume, based on what I think he's probably gone unless, like you said, the trade suitors fall
You,
apart
here,
and
here,
Chicago goes, take it all.
here's an interesting scenario that I could possibly see. Let's say hypothetically Zach LaVine goes to the Lakers.
Right.
They play the scenario out with Zach, LeBron, and AD.
Right.
I still, I can't believe I'm actually saying this. I think I've said this before, but it still kind of shocks me. I think the Lakers still need to possibly entertain trading LeBron. I think that's something that they still have to consider.
It's been
Because,
mentioned. Stephen A's been saying it for a couple weeks now, so a couple months.
because what if the Lakers did a sign and trade with LeBron for Zach?
That's not
And
happening.
I don't think it's happening because you'd have to do a lot more than just Zach. You have to do,
100%.
you'd have to add in probably a bunch of different players. But
I
if
don't
you,
think Braun's moving his family this late into Chicago. Personally, it just
yeah,
doesn't make sense.
well, it's just there's something that just tells me that the Lakers should really consider trading LeBron.
I'm not denying that. I'm just saying Chicago's not the place to go. He's not going to go from beautiful LA to Chirac, Chicago. Granted, he's not going to live in Southside Chicago, but the point of the matter is Bronny's doing everything he's got to do in LA, and freaking Bryce is out there cooking at his age at what 14, 15. I don't think he's going to uproot them to go back to an inner city like that.
I just don't know
And
how
that's just
long.
the family aspect. That's a
I,
downgrade to me if you're
but
talking about Chicago.
if we're talking about the Lakers front office, though, I mean, how far are you going to play this out? LeBron is going to be what, 38?
30, 38 or 39, whichever one it is in
I
December, yeah.
mean,
But he play
I
out the
mean,
rest of his contract. He's only got 2 more years, this year and then another one.
I just don't know how much longer like the Lakers can keep entertaining this. Like, at some point you're going to have to blow this thing up.
Well,
You're going to
yeah,
have
but you
to.
can't blame Braun for AD's injuries and Russell's poor performance. I
y-
mean, for
y-
God's sakes, a
I
38-year-old averaged 30 points per
I
game and almost won the scoring title.
I understand that, but guess what? Pretty much outside of the championship year in 2020 when they won in the bubble, he's
We
dealt
talked about this. Yes.
he's dealt
Yep.
with pretty solid injuries. And I
Yep.
understand, like, you're reaching that point in your career where your body's starting to break down. You're not as reliable as you used to be just because of the lingering injuries. And I think if you're the Lakers, you're looking at this from a front office perspective of LeBron is going to have diminishing returns. He already has had diminishing returns. Now, granted, he's still viable. He can still average 30 points a game. That's not an issue. But it's like, what are you going to be able to possibly get back from him if you were to consider some sort of trade or something in that manner? I'm not saying like they should do it with Zach LaVine and, the Chicago aspect, but I mean, if they were able to bring Zach into the fold, they may try that experiment 1 year with Zach, AD, and Braun. If it works out somewhat, cool. If it doesn't, I think that they may just end up keeping Zach for the long term, run it with him and AD, and trade Braun after next year.
I think again, this is a spitball. It have nothing to do with what we've
Yeah,
heard. A team I think he would fit good, Portland.
they need. Yeah, well, I mean,
Dude,
it,
Zach Levine,
Veen,
Damon
Dame,
and Lillard. They have not Andrelton as a baseball player. They have that Simmons kid that actually came out and did very, very well for them this season. Nasir Little, when he got a healthy, he actually showed a couple of 20-point, 30-point games. You obviously have Josh Hart. You have
mhm.
Nurkic. There's a couple of other players on this roster, of course, I'm not familiar with, but when Dame went out, they showed fight.
Yeah,
So they'll have a little bit of a decent bench, 2 stars. I think that's solid. Now they're not going to go out there and compete for a top 4 seed. Maybe they will. I don't know, with depending on the
I think
chemistry
they'll
with
be a
Dame and
playoff.
Zach. But
They'll be a playoff team.
100%. And I think that they'll be able to compete more than Chicago will, because Chicago's got to worry about a lot of other things this offseason. They got to re-sign Kobe White. They got to figure out the situation if they're going to be keeping Lonzo with all the injuries that he had. Obviously, you have to figure out what you're doing with Vucevic if you're going to extend him. There's stuff going on in Chicago that they have to figure out overall. And then another team potentially that they could get or think about, New Orleans. Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, CJ McCollum, and Zach LaVine. You move CJ to the 1, Zach LaVine to the 2, Brandon at the 3, Zion at the 4, and then Steven Adams at the 5, or you rotate whoever, who fits best in that situation. They have a young team. They took not Golden State. They took Phoenix to 6. Why not?
It just depends on how the whole
You put a
situation.
package together.
Would it be a sign and trade though? Like,
It all depends on what they're going to end up doing in terms of the agreed upon situation from the Chicago side. But I don't think that Portland or New Orleans are in any position to not pay attention to Zach LaVine's availability.
mhm.
New Orleans was on the precipice of being eliminated from playoff contention, and they went and they pushed the defending Western Conference champions to 6 after the play-in tournament.
Yeah,
I think that they have earned some respect, and they did that without Zion, who has just recently been cleared for activities.
it's about
Now
fucking
again,
time.
but now we're talking about the same thing in LA. Do you really want to have multiple people that can't stay healthy on the same team?
Yeah, because you would have 3 at that point. And then you got, well, here's the thing. Russell would have to go. Russell has got to go.
Russell's not going to be on Los Angeles, at least not the Lakers, because I don't know if he's going to go to the Clip. No one knows what the fuck's going on with that. But him being owed 40 some odd $1 million
It's
next
not going to
season,
happen. They
LA's
gotta
not
move
doing
him.
that again. They're not doing it again.
But
And Russ isn't happy. So if both sides agree it's better to be apart, better for the Lakers.
it'd be interesting with the whole Zach thing, though.
Hey,
And
but that's why we're talking about it, because he is an intriguing piece for a multitude of teams this offseason, and he would be best fit in a couple of different situations. So that's
except
why we're here.
Dallas, except Dallas.
Exactly. It's just listen. I love Zach LaVine. I just don't think he's gonna like sitting there waiting for Luca to pass him the ball at the end of a shot clock to bail him out.
Because you know why? They're gonna just run ISO the entire time. Everybody's gonna be spaced out. Luca's gonna take like 30 dribbles before he ends up passing it out to somebody or ends up just shooting a contested shot. So
Exactly.
I can
Zach's
under.
gonna sit there like, bro, I'm not here to watch you dribble.
I know. It's just, what are you gonna do?
It's it's not
It's
an
Luke.
effective way to play basketball either. I'm not sitting here defending it. I don't like it, and you know that. We've talked about Luca's flaws, but Zach does not make us any better. If anything, he weakens us because we're going to have to give something up if he doesn't come straight up.
True. True.
Trying to
That
find
was
this man's contract because I'm sitting here like now it's
who's
starting to bother me that I don't know it. Zach's,
who's Zach. Okay, let's see. Usually I could find this
because I
pretty
thought
quick.
I had it up, but I didn't.
So his contract is he signed a 4-year deal upwards of $78 million.
Yep.
He's just making under 20 mil a year.
Yeah, he's a free agent. Yeah, he's a free agent this year. Unrestricted free agent. So there's no sign and trade unless Chicago gives him an extension and then they agree to trade him. But
Yeah,
yeah, no. He's unrestricted.
which is kind of weird that really a lot of the rumors that have been circulating so far have been revolving around this idea of a sign and trade.
Because I think teams that are interested are going to have to give stuff up because they need to alleviate the books, which
Yeah,
is why it makes sense. Russell's got to come off your books. If we acquire Zach, that would probably more than likely
I
mean
guarantee
we're
you,
getting rid of Timmy and we're not re-signing Brunson.
Chicago's going to burn if Russell goes.
Oh my god, it's gonna be
I mean,
horrible,
any team that picks up Russell at this point. I mean, it's very
dude.
rare. Like it's very rare. Like that's just a toxic contract. It's toxic.
That blame OKC for that one. So Sam Presti may have 17 picks in the next like 5 or 6 years, but giving him that damn contract was absolute ludicrous. But listen,
But he was smart. He got off that contract though.
Russell Westbrook, the season before this one was once again a walk-in triple-double. Played great with Bradley Beal.
Yeah, with the Wizards.
He was inserted into a team that it just didn't work on paper in general. And then they try to make it work in person because of the name and him being a point guard. If he goes to Chicago, he will take more of that focal pointed leader position where he can defer off to a non-ball dominant player in DeMar DeRozan. Lonzo Ball gets to learn underneath him, and they get another defensive player. They get a defensive player to move positions into the shooting guard role, and he's going to facilitate. And he's got a big with Vucevic with the pick and roll, which is what he had with Steven Adams. I'm not saying it's going to work, but I'm saying it has potential. Russell Westbrook can still
Now,
go out there. Listen.
I'm very
Pat Bev made a
pessimistic.
good
I'm
Pat Bev made a
pessimistic.
good point.
I don't care.
Pat Bev
Care if
made a
he made
good point. At the
Of what?
at the end of the day, to put up 21, 8 and 8 is not horrid numbers. Now, percentage-wise, they were horrible from the field in terms of efficiency. But in the NBA at 30 plus years of age, with the mileage that he has on his body, 21, 8 and 8 is not a horrible season. It's the way that the Lakers ended and the way that the narrative built up with that 3-6 with the Lakers 360, and obviously being paired with LeBron James, the pressure, and obviously the issue with Frank Vogel. There was a bunch of different narratives, him hating how the fans treated him not liking the market out there. I'm just saying a fresh start in Chicago doesn't necessarily mean that Russell Westbrook is going to have another season like this one. There's potential for success. That's all I'm saying. I don't think he's going to have a crash and burn decline for the rest of his career. That's all I'm saying.
I think so. I think at this point,
You think he's washed? Is he washed?
dude. Did you watch some of the shots that he took with the Lakers this year? Did you see how
I'm not.
bad?
I'm not defending. I'm saying, is he
Dude,
washed? That's not what I'm asking. Is he
yes,
washed?
yes, he's
At
washed.
21, 8 and 8, he's washed.
Yes, he is
Okay.
washed. The reason why
I said the same thing about James Harden, and you said
I don't get any satisfaction about saying that. I I mean, listen, I would take James over Russell at this point. You're gonna tell me that you would take Russell Westbrook over James Harden?
That's a hard one, man. I hate James Harden. I can't pick James Harden.
You go tell me that you go and pick you're gonna pick Russell Westbrook over James Harden. You gotta say that with
The only reason I would say, stop, hold on. As a bold take, this is what we do. This is the point. The only reason I would take Russell Westbrook over him is because Russell Westbrook's going to give me 210%, no matter what happens. James Harden gives you half effort, just like Luka Doncic on the other end. It's a fact. James Harden gives up. If Russell keeps shooting, that's him trying. James doesn't shoot when needed.
Effort?
That's huge. That's huge.
Okay, you want to talk
massive.
Okay, you want to talk about effort? It takes a lot of effort to be able to hit the top of the backboard when Russell shoots the basketball, bro. Like, are you kidding me? Like, granted, James, when it comes to the playoffs, can't really rely on him. I mean, did Russell really show me that he could carry the Lakers to even like some sort of playoff relevance when like LeBron and AD
he
were
never
out?
was going to. But you just said that the roster assimilated behind them was atrocious.
It was.
What is he supposed to do if they're not knocking down shots? And he's got to be able to pick up the slack and say, well, shit, I just passed you the ball 5 straight times and you didn't make not one.
Listen, the Lakers brought him on to be the third piece alongside LeBron and AD.
That was their fuck up.
And guess what? When LeBron and AD weren't there, who's got to step up? Russell. And a lot of the times, bricks.
Right.
Bricks, shooting 30-some% from the field.
He won't have to do that with DeMar DeRozan because DeMar DeRozan is a consistent player and showed at the age, 33, 34, he can still put up good numbers.
The problem is with Russell is that he knows one speed and one speed only. He plays too fast. And at this point, he just doesn't have really any of the control that he used to when he was younger. Now, I understand that
Define control because Russell Westbrook's career in terms of like turnovers per game has still relatively been in the upwards of 3 to 4 per game, and that hasn't gone down.
The control aspect that I've seen him really, like, I guess the part that's really tapered off is that when he just attacks the basket, like when the ball hits the backboard, it's like I mean,
it's sailing off of it. I 100% understand where you're going with that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just that. I mean, granted, Russell's known that speed like his entire career. He's largely gotten away with it until like the last couple of years or so. It's just at a certain point, it's like the athleticism is working in reverse with him because
it's hurting him for sure.
Now you got to show me some more subtleties to your game. And the thing is that Russell is just all athlete. And even Kevin Durant kind of mentioned that when he talked about his tenure with the Thunder. He played with a lot of athletes. When he moved to Golden State, then that was a different situation because he was actually playing with like what he thought of were like genuine basketball players. Now, Russell, athletically, is gifted as can be. I mean, the guy's effort is something that I cannot question. But his effectiveness, his ability to be able to execute in high pressure moments, it's just not there. I mean, for God's sake.
I agree.
Now, you could make that similar case with James, especially when it comes to the playoffs. But at least James is more consistent as a shooter. Russell is not.
I won't deny that. Russell has to understand this is why basketball players have an off season. I'm not shooting well.
So far. Effort will only get you so far.
Not denying that. Russell has to understand I'm not a shooter. I was forced into a lot of shooting situations. I took a lot of bad shots. I had a very bad year, and he's in a contract year. He knows that he'll never get a paycheck like this ever again. So that's going to force him even more to prove people wrong. I think once Russell, if he's in the right situation, I'm not saying Chicago's the right fit. I'm not saying Chicago's going to magically wipe or absolve him of all his sins this offseason or terrible performance. What I'm saying is, in a different system with a different team, knowing that he needs to play better to get another check, it could potentially change the perspective as opposed to James Harden was a game away from, extending Philly's season to, a game 7, should I say. And they were in the postseason, and he had one of the better players in the world in Joel Embiid, and he had the scoring champion on his team and Tyrese Maxey. Russell didn't have that. Russell didn't have his LeBron James, the greatest player of all time, arguably. He didn't have his Anthony Davis, his high pick and roll guy that can pop out and hit 15-footers and three-point shooters, or three-point shots. That's what I'm saying. This is where you look at it and you say, James had an assimilated team around him and he didn't perform. Russell ain't have shit, and he was still giving you 150 miles an hour, throwing himself at the backboard. Whether or not the shots were good, he was doing something. James took 2 shots in a Game 6 loss, and Joel Embiid's basically playing with a broken face and a busted shooting hand, taking 24 shots for them to lose and James Harden not do a damn thing. James Harden don't try on defense. James Harden's loose with the ball, and he going to take 8, 9 step back 3-point shots when he don't need to. Russell will take that if he has to. Russell will take that when he has a heat check moment, but that's not his MO. His MO is attack the basket, get to the free throw line, get people involved. You put him in a situation with a good big and a second running mate like he had with Bradley Beal, which would be DeMar DeRozan, I think it would be better. And Lonzo can keep up on the break if Lonzo's healthy.
Yeah, he could. But if you're talking about Russell and James, okay,
I'm sorry, I got to take Russell, bro. I got to take Russell. I hate James Harden, bro. Bias is coming out. And this season showed James Harden had no excuse to fail this year.
You know what's
zero.
You know what's absolutely crazy? Russell had a higher shooting percentage than James this year. Did.
I rest my fucking case. I dropped the mic. If I could drop this goddamn microphone, I swear to God, I would.
But Russell shot 29% from the.
He's never been a 3-point shooter. We all know that. I don't care.
29%.
We're
James shot a higher 3-point percentage. So
we're done here. We're done.
But it's the way that Russell misses the shots.
The way that Russell misses a miss. A miss is a miss.
A
miss is a miss, bro. If it ain't go in, a miss is a miss. If it's ugly as shit or if it's off the back, literally, if it rims in and out, it's off.
Top.
I hear you. But again, I stand by and I put my fucking feet down when I tell you, if the Dallas Mavericks had a blank slate right now, not a single soul on the team, I'm taking Russell Westbrook over James Harden. I just am.
Say that again. Say it loud and clear.
No. I said it one more time. I said, you have this recorded. It's fine. There'll be evidence out there to hang me later if Russell has a horrible season next year. That's fine.
So you're going to tell me that if Russell Westbrook go to the Dallas Mavericks, that you'd be totally fine with that?
I said if we had a blank team and nobody was on it, yes. Not with Luka Doncic. Again, Luka throws everything off.
Right now.
Russell, no.
Russell, right now.
Him and Luka would never, ever, ever work. Ever. I don't need a ball dominant guard who can't shoot. That doesn't work for me. Not in our system.
So, but you would take Russell.
In that case.
But you would take Russell on a blank slate team.
Yes. Because I know Russell Westbrook is going to pass. I know Russell Westbrook is going to get rebounds. I know Russell Westbrook is going to get out on the break. I know Russell Westbrook is going to give me my effort. I don't need to worry about that. The game we could get blown out 178-12. In those 12 points, Russell's probably going to shoot the ball like 58 times, if not more, because he's going to keep trying. James Harden's going to look at it and say, damn, strip club open at 11. I got practice at 9. I'm finna be there to 8:45. Grab some breakfast. We straight.
Yeah. Okay.
Russell's head's in the game at all times.
Except when he's except when he's cussing out fans when someone says something out of pocket.
We've talked about this 1,000 times. Fans and people nowadays act tough because they know that people can't respond because they're going to hit him with a lawsuit. Russell Westbrook had every right to knock that fan's teeth out. You don't say things like that. You don't talk shit because you know you can't do nothing.
Are you advocating for violence, my guy?
What?
Are you advocating for violence then? You said you can knock his teeth out?
No, I'm from the damn 90s and I come from New York. You run your mouth, you're going to get your shit rocked. That's a fact. No matter where you go, in the world or in life. Just because Russell is an athlete does not mean that you are not immune from catching these hands.
Well, first of all, you're of the mindset that Russell can fight. I'm not convinced that Russell can fight.
I don't care if he can fight or not. The fact that Russell Westbrook is sitting there getting heckled with his God knows family in the car on his way home in Toronto. Are you kidding me right now? Who did that fan think he was?
Hey, some of these fans could be out of pocket, bro. I remember the one fan in Philly that gave him the double middle fingers And I remember like Russell gave him like
See,
this
that's
weird
different though. That's
it was like
different though,
like
bro. That's but no words are exchanged there. If I'm sitting there and I'm flipping the bird and I'm not running my mouth about your kids, about your wife, about you as an individual, you got to be able to shrug that off. Like you said, you're going to be in adverse situations throughout your whole career as an athlete. And that's a situation where you just have to let it go. But when you start running your mouth and start saying disrespectful and offensive things about your loved ones and about you, not as you as a basketball player, about you,
see, I
it
would just
gets
get
it gets hard.
I get on my troll game at that point. I get my
But
troll
again, it
game
gets
and just
hard
flip.
because
I'd flip
he
it.
was getting it all year and he was getting the death threats and his wife was getting made fun of and his kids, like, you know what I'm
We
saying? That
talked about this. We talked about whether or not that he was being criticized fairly or not. And
yeah, and we both and we,
there were multiple times when legitimate criticisms could be made about Russell's game. Was
yes.
there points in time where the criticism went too far? Yes. But when it came to actual critiques about his game, those were valid.
Yes, agreed. About the game, about the basketball aspect. Yes, the game, not Russell and the rest of his family. Correct.
Yes. You know, the personal stuff that's a little bit different. But
Yeah, but
to give Russell a little bit of credit, because I feel like I've been dunking on him for like the last like 15 minutes. There is this one thing that Kevin and I do like before we get our episode
oh,
started,
all the time.
and we always do like the whole Russell Westbrook thing that he used to do back in the day,
The
where
pregame ritual that he does.
yeah, like where essentially like he like has both of his like arms back behind the back of his head, and he does like this thing where he flexes back and forth, like so we always gotta do that before we get our
It's our
episode
hype
started.
thing.
Yeah, basically how we get into the zone before we dive into
It's
this.
facts. We ain't do it today because we ain't start recording till midnight, and we both
Yeah,
sitting here like
yeah.
even though we do that, that's not gonna wake us up. That might make us too tired.
It's like yeah, now my arms are tired.
Nah, I'm going to bed.
The rest of my body's are tired, so I was like, yeah. But no, that's pretty much everything that we have. I think we kind of went on a little bit of a tangent at the end, but
We always do.
that's what we do.
Yeah.
So, um, Kev, I'll let you take it from here, bro. Take us on out.
Well, guys, for those of you that are interested in hockey, the New York Rangers play tomorrow for Game 7 to face the Tampa Bay Lightning, or with the potential to face the Tampa Bay Lightning in the Eastern Conference Finals. Or is it called Eastern Conference for hockey? Yeah, so they have the opportunity to go out there and face the Lightning to go and, for a shot at the Stanley Cup. Uh, Rangers won 5-2 in the game 6 to force the game 7. Obviously, as a Ranger supporter, I can't say fan because I don't watch hockey, but as someone who is cheering for the Rangers, I will be locked in to watch that game tomorrow. Hopefully, they are able to combat it, which means it'll be my team versus Kyle's team, and maybe I'll be able to lock in for that potential matchup. But overall, we got some playoff hockey still going on, so we'll monitor that and kind of keep that updated. But outside of that, man, the NBA Finals are here. Baseball season's coming toward the midpoint, upwards of July. Usually, when summer comes around, is usually where baseball starts to kick in full swing. And but yeah, outside of that, man, we got a lot of stuff coming up in the future. We got a lot of things planned out. TikTok is rolling. Twitter's actually rolling. So we're making things happen. We're staying consistent, and we're just grateful for the support that we get from everybody and anybody. Big shout out to Kyle, as I always say every now and again, man. Without him editing these videos before work and editing these TikToks that I know are immensely tedious, we wouldn't be here. So, just kudos to my partner. But outside of that, guys, we appreciate any and all support, and we'll just keep doing this, and we'll be seeing y'all soon, man.
Yeah, I'm just like Kevin said. Appreciate you guys tuning in, whether it was on the YouTube side of things or listening to us on the audio platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast. Definitely appreciate you guys tuning into the podcast. Like we said earlier in the episode, we'll have a segment coming out in the middle of the week where we give our full predictions for the NBA Finals between the Celtics and the Warriors. So definitely stay tuned for that. And then more than likely we'll probably drop an episode on Thursday this week, just because I know for a fact Kevin and I do not want to start recording at like 12:30 at night on
Again,
Thursday. So we're not going to do that. So we'll probably drop an episode on Thursday this week. So be on the lookout for that. But with that said, once again, thank you guys for tuning in for the episode, and we will see you guys later this week.